While I was fighting for my life in hospital, my husband Jasper emptied our accounts and told everyone I wouldn't make it. She won't need these assets where she's going, he laughed to his mistress, buying a yacht with 20 years of my savings. When my estranged uncle's attorney arrived with news of a $750 million inheritance left solely in my name, I smiled through my oxygen mask and watched as Jasper's world collapsed in slow motion. The hospital room's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, a sound I'd grown accustomed to during my 6-week stay in the cardiac unit at Westlake Memorial. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My hands trembled slightly as I held the bank statements that my friend Kelly had smuggled in, page after page of evidence, documenting how thoroughly my husband of 18 years had betrayed me. "Are you sure you should be looking at these now, Minnie?" Kelly whispered, her eyes darting nervously to the heart rate monitor beside my bed. Dr. Wallace said to avoid stress. I let out a bitter laugh that triggered a coughing fit, the surgical scar from my emergency valve replacement pulling tight across my chest. What's more stressful? Finding out now or waking up homeless after Jasper's finished? The statements told a devastating story. 3 days after my collapse at our anniversary dinner, later determined to be from digitalis poisoning rather than a congenital heart defect as initially suspected, Jasper had begun systematically emptying our accounts. First our joint savings, then the investment portfolio I'd carefully built during my career as a biochemical patent attorney. Even the college fund for Tobias, my son from my first marriage. $4.2 million, I murmured, tallying the total. Everything I built over 20 years. Kelly squeezed my hand. I never trusted him, Minnie. Something about that. Smile always seemed calculated. I'd met Jasper Harrington at a charity auction 18 years ago, shortly after my divorce. He'd seemed the opposite of my first husband. Attentive, financially stable, charming. I'd been vulnerable then, a single mother with a 5-year-old son and a demanding career. When Jasper proposed after a whirlwind 6-month romance, I'd accepted, without hesitation. "The papers are ready to file," Kelly said, sliding a manila folder from her designer handbag. As my closest friend and the managing partner at Birmingham & Associates, she'd been documenting Jasper's activities since becoming suspicious of his frequent hospital inquiries about my life insurance policies. The monitor beside me beeped as my heart rate increased. "Breathe," I reminded myself. "Stress is what put you here." "There's more," Kelly said, her voice dropping further. "Security footage from the Meridian Hotel. Your husband and his companion." She passed me her tablet. The timestamp showed 2 weeks ago, while I was still in intensive care, my survival uncertain. Jasper and a woman I recognized as Yasmin Blackwood, his executive assistant, were checking into the presidential suite. His hand rested possessively on the small of her back, his wedding ring noticeably absent. "They've been seeing each other for at least 9 months, Kelly explained. "My investigator found credit card statements, hotel reservations, jewelry purchases. Classic affair pattern." I handed back the tablet, a strange calm settling over me. The betrayal was so complete, so methodical, that it moved beyond pain into something else entirely. Clarity. "He thinks I'm dying," I said quietly. "That's why he's moving so quickly. The doctors told him my prognosis was poor, and he's clearing out everything before I'm gone." Kelly nodded grimly. "He's been telling everyone you're not expected to recover. Even had the nerve to meet with funeral homes last week." I closed my eyes, memories flooding back. The odd taste in my anniversary champagne. Jasper insisting I drink it despite my comment about the bitterness. His strangely calm demeanor when I began experiencing chest pains. The paramedics later saying that minutes had passed between my collapse and when he called emergency services. "He tried to kill me," I whispered, the truth crystallizing with terrible certainty. The toxicology report shows digitalis levels that can't be explained by accidental exposure, Kelly confirmed. Martin is building a case, but it's circumstantial without more evidence. Martin Reynolds had been my colleague before becoming Birmingham County's district attorney. He'd visited me twice, his questions carefully framed to avoid alerting hospital staff to a potential attempted murder investigation. A soft knock interrupted us. Nurse Sasha Peters entered, her kind eyes taking in the bank statements spread across my lap before efficiently gathering them as she pretended to adjust my blankets. "Your husband called," she said, ensuring the statements were hidden from view. "He's delayed in New York but sends his love." Her tone remained professional, but the slight arch of her eyebrow conveyed volumes. Sasha had been my primary nurse since admission. She'd witnessed Jasper's performances when doctors were present, the devoted husband, distraught yet brave, and his true callousness when he thought no one was watching. "The Monaco account statement arrived this morning," Sasha murmured, slipping a folded paper from her pocket once she'd checked we were alone. "I documented it before it disappeared from your mail tray. The statement showed a transfer of $1.8 million to an account I'd never seen before. The Monaco Private Banking Group. The transfer date, yesterday." "He's planning to disappear," Kelly said, studying the document. "Classic exit strategy. Offshore account, jurisdiction with strict banking privacy laws." "Mrs. Harrington?" A quiet voice came from the doorway. A silver-haired man in an impeccable suit stood there, leather briefcase in hand. "I'm Lawrence Winters, attorney for the late Maximilian Frost. I apologize for the intrusion, but the matter is rather urgent. My Uncle Max, my mother's estranged brother whom I hadn't seen since childhood. The eccentric billionaire whose technology patents had revolutionized quantum computing. The recluse whose death had made international headlines 3 weeks ago." "I've been trying to reach you," Lawrence continued, approaching cautiously. "But your husband insisted you were too ill for visitors. Fortunately, your nurse contacted my office." Sasha gave a slight nod, her expression neutral but her eyes watchful. "Uncle Max is dead," I said unnecessarily, the words feeling strange on my lips. I hadn't spoken to him in decades, not since my mother's funeral when I was 12. "Yes, 3 weeks ago. And he has left you everything." The room fell silent except for the steady beep of the heart monitor. "Everything?" Kelly finally asked. Lawrence nodded solemnly. "The full Frost estate, valued at approximately $750 million in liquid assets, plus the technology holdings, real estate, and various collections. All left exclusively to Ms. Minerva Frost Harrington, with explicit instructions that no assets are to be accessible to her spouse under any circumstances." I stared at him, the implications slowly penetrating my fog of medication and betrayal. "That's impossible," I whispered. "I haven't seen him since I was a child." "Mr. Frost followed your career with great interest," Lawrence explained, opening his briefcase. "He was immensely proud of your work in biochemical patent law, though he respected your mother's wish for distance. He made arrangements years ago for this inheritance, with the stipulation that his death not be the result of natural causes." "Not natural causes?" Kelly asked sharply. "Mr. Frost died of digitalis poisoning," Lawrence said, meeting my eyes directly. "The same compound found in your system, Mrs. Harrington." The heart monitor's beeping accelerated as the pieces clicked into place. "Jasper," I breathed. "Jasper knew about the inheritance." Lawrence nodded gravely. "We believe so. And now, if you're feeling strong enough, we need to discuss protection measures. Your husband has already attempted to claim access to the estate as your next of kin, citing your incapacitation." As the implications sank in, a strange calm settled over me. For the first time since waking in this hospital bed, I felt something, beyond fear and betrayal. I felt power. "Tell me everything," I said, sitting up straighter despite the pain in my chest. "And then tell me how we ensure Jasper never sees a single penny of my uncle's money." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Kelly and Sasha exchanged glances, a silent agreement passing between them. Lawrence began extracting documents from his briefcase with practiced efficiency. The game had changed. Jasper thought he was emptying the accounts of a dying woman. He had no idea he was stealing from the sole heiress to one of the largest technology fortunes in the world, one who now had every resource necessary to destroy him. Before the betrayal, before the hospital, before I knew the true nature of the man I had married, life had seemed almost perfect. Our home in the Lakeside district was featured in Architectural Digest. Jasper's investment firm, Harrington Capital, managed over $500 million in assets for clients across the eastern seaboard. My own career as a biochemical patent attorney had brought financial independence and professional respect. Tobias had graduated from Princeton last year and was pursuing his PhD in molecular biology at Stanford. From the outside, the Harringtons were the epitome of success. I'd met Jasper at a charity auction for rare diseases research. Ironically, the field where my uncle had made his early fortune before transitioning to quantum computing. I was 32, recently divorced from Tobias's father, and determined to build a stable life for my 5-year-old son. "You have excellent taste in art and terrible taste in auction strategy," Jasper had said, appearing beside me as I lost a bidding war for a painting I'd coveted. His smile had seemed genuine then, his attention flattering. "Never show how much you want something. It only drives up the price." Later that evening, he'd presented me with the painting, having quietly outbid everyone after I'd walked away. "Consider it an investment in future conversations," he'd said with that charming smile that would become so familiar. 6 months later, we were married in the Botanical Gardens, Tobias serving as the ring bearer. I'd signed the prenuptial agreement. Without much concern, I had my own assets, my own career. The document seemed reasonable, even prudent given our respective financial positions. Now, 18 years later, those documents would prove to be both my vulnerability and my salvation. "The prenup contains a medical incapacity clause," Lawrence explained, pointing to a highlighted paragraph in the thick document Kelly had retrieved from my home office. "If either spouse becomes medically incapacitated, the other gains financial power of attorney after 60 days. Tomorrow marks day 42, I calculated, my mind racing despite the fog of medication. "Precisely why we need to act quickly," Lawrence confirmed. "Once your husband gains power of attorney, he could potentially access parts of the inheritance despite the provisions in Maximilian's will." 2 nurses passed by my room, their voices dropping as they glanced inside. Word of my condition, both medical and financial, had begun circulating among the staff, creating an unexpected network of allies. "Dr. Wallace is planning to officially upgrade your condition this afternoon," Sasha informed me, checking my IV with practiced efficiency. "Your latest tests show significant improvement." The irony wasn't lost on me. The very heart that Jasper had tried to stop was now stubbornly recovering, refusing to give him the easy victory he'd planned. "Has my son called?" I asked, suddenly remembering Tobias was presenting at a conference in Tokyo, unaware of the latest developments. Kelly nodded. "I spoke with him this morning. He's cutting the conference short, taking the next flight home." The thought of Tobias learning about Jasper's betrayal created a fresh wave of pain. My son had looked up to his stepfather, had sought his approval, despite Jasper's subtle but persistent emotional distance. Another relationship built on lies. "I need to see the full scope of what we're dealing with," I said, forcing my attention back to the matter at hand. "How much does Jasper know about the inheritance?" Lawrence adjusted his glasses, his expression serious. "Based on his communications with our office, he's aware of the inheritance, but not the exclusive nature of the bequest. He believes, as your husband, he'll have control of the assets during your incapacitation, and eventually full access should you not recover. Which explains the digitalis, Kelly added grimly. First your uncle, then you. Two seemingly natural heart failures. And suddenly Jasper controls one of the largest private fortunes in the country. Sasha returned with a tablet, pulling up my medical records with quick, efficient movements. The toxicology report shows a digitalis concentration consistent with intentional poisoning, not accidental exposure. Dr. Wallace has documented this, but kept it from your official chart at Detective Alvarez's request. Detective Maria Alvarez had visited once, posing as a hospital administrator. Her questions about my anniversary dinner had seemed routine until she'd shown me a photograph of the champagne glass recovered from our home, preserved by the housekeeper who'd found my collapsed form and called the ambulance Jasper claimed to have summoned. We need a comprehensive strategy, Lawrence said, spreading several documents across the adjustable tray table. Legal, financial, and personal protection must be coordinated. Mr. Frost anticipated potential complications and made certain preparations. What kind of preparations? I asked, intrigued despite my exhaustion. Lawrence's professional demeanor softened slightly. Your uncle was unconventional, but extremely intelligent. When he suspected his own poisoning, he activated a security protocol. Every financial movement, every communication, every decision made regarding his assets in the weeks before his death was documented by an independent security team. That same team has been monitoring your husband since the reading of the will. The revelation that Uncle Max had suspected his own murder and prepared for it sent a chill through me. How many others had Jasper harmed in his ruthless pursuit of wealth? The man who'd shared my bed for 18 years suddenly seemed like a complete stranger. Show me everything, I said, determination replacing shock. Every account he's emptied, every conversation he's had about my condition, every plan he's making. Kelly placed her hand on mine. Are you sure, Minnie? You're still recovering. I met her concerned gaze steadily. My recovery will be much faster once I know exactly what I'm fighting. Jasper thinks he's dismantling the life of a dying woman. I intend to show him just how alive I am. Lawrence nodded, impressed. I see why Maximilian chose you. He said you had quiet steel beneath the professional exterior. The thought that my uncle had been watching my career, perhaps even proud of my accomplishments, created an unexpected pang of sorrow for the relationship we might have had. Day 42, I murmured, glancing at the calendar on the wall. That gives us 18 days to prevent Jasper from gaining power of attorney. 17, Lawrence corrected. The paperwork can be filed at midnight on day 59. Kelly's phone buzzed with an incoming message. She glanced down, her expression shifting from concern to grim satisfaction. That's our investigator, she said. Jasper just booked another transfer to the Monaco account. $500,000, scheduled for tomorrow morning. I felt a cold clarity settling over me, replacing the hurt and betrayal with resolute purpose. Perfect. Now we know exactly where to begin. As Lawrence outlined the initial protective measures for the Frost estate, I found myself wondering what Jasper would do when he discovered that his dying wife wasn't just surviving. She was about to become one of the wealthiest women in America. And she knew exactly what he had done. Mom? Oh my God, Mom. Tobias's voice cracked as he entered the hospital room, his tall frame seeming to fold in on itself at the sight of me connected to the various machines. At 23, my son still had the lanky build of his father, but his eyes, sharp, analytical, kind, were all mine. I'm okay, Toby, I said, using the childhood nickname he pretended to hate. Better than they expected. He dropped his travel bag and rushed to my bedside, taking my hand with the gentleness one might use for spun glass. The transatlantic flight from Tokyo had left dark circles under his eyes, his normally meticulously styled hair disheveled from hours of travel. Kelly said it was serious, but... He stopped, swallowing hard. Why didn't Jasper call me right away? I had to hear about your condition from Kelly 3 weeks after it happened. The question hung in the air, heavy with implications neither of us was ready to voice. It's complicated, Toby, I said carefully. Where is Jasper now? He texted that he's on his way from the airport. His flight from New York landed an hour ago. Tobias's gaze sharpened. What's going on, Mom? Kelly was evasive. The nurses are treating me strangely. And there's a security guard outside your door who checked my ID before letting me in. I squeezed his hand, buying time. How do you tell your son that the man who raised him had tried to murder you for money? Sweetie, there are some things we need to discuss about Jasper, about our marriage. I paused, choosing my words carefully. Things aren't what they seemed. Before I could continue, Lawrence Winters appeared in the doorway, his silver hair immaculate despite the late hour. Mrs. Harrington, I apologize for the interruption, but Mr. Harrington has just entered the hospital. Tobias looked between us, confusion evident. Who are you? Lawrence Winters, your great-uncle Maximilian's attorney. Lawrence extended his hand. You must be Tobias. Your mother has spoken highly of your research in molecular biology. Great-uncle, Max, the reclusive billionaire? Tobias's confusion deepened. What does he have to do with Mom's condition? More than you might think, came Kelly's voice as she entered, closing the door firmly behind her. We need to move quickly, Minnie. Jasper's in the elevator. The next moments unfolded with practiced precision. Sasha dimmed the lights and adjusted my monitors to display readings from the previous day, when my condition had appeared more serious. Kelly took position by the window, partially concealed by the curtain. Lawrence retreated to the corner, tablet in hand, ready to document the interaction. Toby, I need you to trust me, I whispered urgently. Whatever happens next, whatever Jasper says or does, just observe. We'll explain everything afterward. My son's expression hardened with determination as he nodded, taking a seat by my bedside, and assuming the pose of the worried son at his mother's sickbed. The door opened, and Jasper Harrington entered, the perfect picture of the concerned husband. At 52, he still maintained the athletic build that had first attracted me, his salt and pepper hair and tailored suit projecting success and reliability. The bouquet of lilies, my favorite, was a masterful touch. Darling, he said, his voice dropping to the hushed tone one uses in sick rooms. You're awake. The doctors said you might be having a difficult day. He nodded to Tobias, the greeting perfunctory at best. Tobias, you made it back from Tokyo. 18 hours ago, my son replied, his tone carefully neutral. I came as soon as I heard. If Jasper noticed the accusation beneath the words, he didn't show it. Instead, he approached my bed, setting the flowers on the side table and taking my hand. I fought the instinct to pull away. How are you feeling today? He asked, his public performance flawless. Dr. Wallace mentioned some complications with the latest treatment. A lie. Dr. Wallace had told him no such thing. Tired, I murmured, playing my part. Everything's confusing. Jasper's thumb stroked the back of my hand in what would appear to observers as a comforting gesture. I recognized it now for what it was, assessing my pulse, my temperature, my fragility. The Monaco property closes next week, he said, his voice gentle as though discussing pleasant dreams. Once you're better, we'll spend time there. The Mediterranean air will help your recovery. The Monaco property, purchased with my money, near the bank where he'd been transferring our funds. The exit strategy Kelly had identified. That sounds nice, I whispered, letting my eyelids flutter as though struggling to stay awake. Don't tire yourself, darling. Jasper's concern was pitch perfect. The doctors say rest is essential for your heart. My heart. The one he'd tried to stop with digitalis, just as he had my uncle's. There was a man here, I mumbled, watching him carefully. Something about Max, about money. The change was subtle but unmistakable. His eyes sharpened, his posture tensed, though his expression remained solicitous. Don't worry about any of that, he soothed. I'm handling everything, the lawyers, the paperwork, all of it. You just focus on getting better. His voice dropped lower. Though the doctors aren't optimistic about a full recovery. Another lie. Dr. Wallace had upgraded my condition just that morning. Tobias shifted in his chair, a small sound of distress escaping him at his stepfather's words. Jasper barely acknowledged his presence. The accounts, I continued, my voice intentionally fragile. Our savings. All taken care of, Jasper assured me, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. I've moved our assets to more secure positions, given your condition. The financial advisor recommended consolidation. We had no financial advisor beyond Jasper himself. Another lie. I should let you rest. He stood, leaning down to press a kiss to my forehead. I'll be back tomorrow with the estate paperwork for the Monaco property. Just a few signatures needed. As he turned to leave, his gaze caught on Kelly, partially visible behind the curtain. His smooth expression faltered momentarily. Kelly, I didn't see you there. Clearly, she replied, her voice cool and professional. I've been reviewing legal matters with Minnie. A muscle twitched in Jasper's jaw. Legal matters should go through me while Minnie is incapacitated. Her doctors have advised against any stress. Funny, Kelly responded, stepping fully into view. Dr. Wallace told me just this morning that mental engagement would be beneficial for Minnie's recovery. And as her attorney of record, I report directly to her, not to you. The tension in the room thickened, the pretense of normalcy cracking. We'll discuss this outside, Jasper said, his voice hardening as he glanced at Tobias, clearly unwilling to drop his concerned husband act entirely. No need, came Lawrence's voice from the corner, causing Jasper to whirl around in surprise. I believe Mrs. Harrington should rest now, as you suggested. Perhaps we can all reconvene tomorrow when she's feeling stronger. Jasper's gaze darted between Lawrence, Kelly, and back to me, calculations visibly racing behind his eyes. Tomorrow, he agreed finally, his smile strained. Feel better, darling. I'll handle everything. The door closed behind him, and the room remained silent until Sasha confirmed he had entered the elevator. That, Tobias said, his voice shaking slightly, was not the man who raised me. I reached for my son's hand. No, it wasn't. The man who raised you was a performance, Toby. A very long, very convincing performance. He's trying to kill you, Tobias stated flatly, the brilliant mind that had earned him academic accolades quickly assembling the pieces. The digitalis poisoning wasn't accidental. No, I confirmed softly. It wasn't. And Uncle Max? The inheritance he mentioned? Lawrence stepped forward, his professional demeanor softening slightly. Your great-uncle left his entire estate to your mother, with explicit provisions preventing your stepfather from accessing any of it. We believe Mr. Harrington was aware of the inheritance and attempted to eliminate both Maximilian and your mother to gain control of the assets. Tobias's face drained of color. My entire life with him was a lie? I squeezed his hand. Not your life, Toby. Your relationship with him was real, even if his motives weren't. But now, we need your help. We have 17 days to prevent him from gaining legal control over my finances and my life. My son's expression hardened with a determination I recognized from my own mirror. Tell me what to do. Our 18th anniversary dinner had been Jasper's idea. The exclusive restaurant overlooking the harbor, the private dining room with its panoramic views, the vintage champagne he'd specially ordered, all of it orchestrated down to the last detail. I can't believe you remembered, I'd said when the sommelier presented the bottle of Krug Clos du Mesnil 1995, the same champagne we'd shared on our honeymoon. 18 years merit something special, Jasper had replied, his smile intimate in the candlelight. Now, 6 weeks later, I watched. The security footage Kelly had obtained from the restaurant. The timestamp showed 8:17 p.m., approximately 30 minutes before my collapse. There, Tobias said, pointing to the tablet screen where Jasper could be seen approaching our table from the direction of the restrooms. He stopped at the service station and did something to the champagne bottle. The footage, grainy but clear enough, showed Jasper pausing by the ice bucket containing our champagne. His back was to the camera, but the slight movement of his arm was unmistakable. Moments later, he returned to the table, raising his glass in a toast. "To 18 more years," he'd said. Detective Maria Alvarez paused the footage, her expression grim. The restaurant maintains their own security system separately from the hotel. Mr. Harrington didn't know about these cameras when he requested the footage from the hotel's main system be deleted, claiming it was to protect Mrs. Harrington's privacy during her medical emergency. "He calculated everything," Kelly said quietly. "The private dining room to minimize witnesses, the special champagne that you would definitely drink, the anniversary setting to avoid suspicion." Dr. Wallace, who had insisted on joining this strategy meeting once he understood the full situation, adjusted his glasses as he reviewed my medical chart. The digitalis concentration was significant, but not immediately fatal. A calculated dose. Enough to cause heart failure that would appear natural given your family history of cardiac issues, Detective Alvarez added. But not so much that it would trigger immediate suspicion. The clinical discussion of my attempted murder made my surgical scar throb with phantom pain. 6 weeks ago, I had been celebrating my marriage. Today, I was watching video evidence of my husband trying to murder me. "What happened after my collapse?" I asked, the moments after my champagne toast, lost to unconsciousness. Detective Alvarez advanced the footage. The dining room erupted in controlled chaos as I slumped in my chair, Jasper appearing appropriately panicked, calling for help. The timestamp showed 8:52 p.m. The emergency call wasn't placed until 9:07 p.m., she noted, pointing to the data on her notepad. 15 minutes where Mr. Harrington insisted to staff he had medical training and was monitoring your condition. 15 minutes where the digitalis could complete its work, Dr. Wallace said bluntly. "The perfect murder," Lawrence observed. "A loving husband tragically loses his wife to a heart condition on their anniversary. No one would question it." "Except I didn't die," I said, my voice stronger than I expected. "Because of the sommelier," Detective Alvarez replied, advancing the footage further. "Philippe Dumont. He recognized the symptoms of digitalis poisoning from his previous career as a paramedic. He called emergency services directly from the kitchen phone and administered preliminary treatment before the ambulance arrived. Mr. Harrington was displeased. The footage showed Jasper attempting to prevent the sommelier from approaching me, his concerned husband facade slipping momentarily into something darker. "I need to thank him," I said quietly. "You will," Kelly assured me. "He's agreed to testify once we file charges." The room fell silent as the implications settled around us. The evidence was mounting. The digitalis in my system, the tampered champagne, the delayed emergency call, the same poison found in my uncle's system, the rapid movement of funds following my hospitalization. "There's more," Lawrence said, sliding a document across the adjustable table. "This arrived from our investigators this morning. Your uncle's security team has been monitoring Mr. Harrington since Maximilian's death. They've traced communications between him and a Dr. Amir Rashid dating back 9 months. Amir? I felt the blood drain from my face. He was my uncle's cardiologist. And the doctor who prescribed your cardiac screening last year, which showed your heart was in perfect condition," Dr. Wallace added, his expression darkening. "Convenient that 6 months later, you would experience sudden cardiac issues." "Rashid certified your uncle's death as natural causes," Lawrence continued. "Initial heart failure followed by complications. Sound familiar?" "The exact diagnosis they initially gave me," I whispered, the conspiracy widening beyond what I had imagined. Not just Jasper, but medical professionals. How many others were involved? Rashid received a $250,000 wire transfer from an offshore account 3 days after your uncle's death, Detective Alvarez stated. We're building a case against him separately. The betrayal felt like a physical weight on my chest. My own husband had orchestrated an elaborate murder plot spanning months, possibly years. When did it begin? I asked, the question directed at no one in particular. When did Jasper start planning this? Lawrence consulted his notes. Based on the financial investigations, unusual patterns began approximately 3 years ago, shortly after your uncle's quantum computing breakthrough. Made headlines. Small transfers, information gathering, establishing offshore accounts. The preparation phase. 3 years. While I was building our life, planning vacations, supporting Tobias through college, Jasper had been meticulously planning my death. The incapacity clause in your prenuptial agreement was modified 5 years ago during what Mr. Harrington called a routine update, Kelly added, highlighting a section of the legal document. The original waiting period was 120 days. He shortened it to 60 and added language giving him broader powers. I signed it without reading carefully, I admitted, the shame of my trusting nature burning in my throat. He said our attorney had recommended updates based on new estate laws. We had no such recommendations on file, Kelly said gently. That signature on the certification page isn't from anyone at our firm. The depth of Jasper's deception was breathtaking. Every angle calculated, every vulnerability exploited. The good news, Lawrence interjected, is that we now have enough evidence to challenge the prenuptial modifications on grounds of fraud. That buys us time beyond the 60-day deadline. And the bad news? Tobias asked, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. The bad news is that your stepfather appears to be accelerating his timeline, Detective Alvarez replied, sliding her phone across the table to show us a message from her precinct. Our surveillance team reports that Mr. Harrington has moved your appointment with the estate attorney to tomorrow morning instead of next week. He's claiming your condition has deteriorated overnight. Dr. Wallace shook his head firmly. I've issued no such medical update. In fact, Mrs. Harrington's recovery is progressing remarkably well. He's getting desperate, Kelly observed, which makes him dangerous. It also makes him careless, I said, a plan beginning to form. And we can use that. Tobias leaned forward, his analytical mind, so similar to my own, visibly processing possibilities. What are you thinking, Mom? I'm thinking it's time to wake up, I replied, my voice gaining strength. Officially, Dr. Wallace can update my medical records showing significant improvement. We let Jasper know I'm coherent, communicative, and expected to make a full recovery. That would derail his power of attorney strategy, Lawrence noted, but it might push him toward more desperate measures. Yes, I agreed. And that's exactly what we want, because this time, we'll be ready. Doctor, Wallace considered the monitors tracking my vital signs. Medically, you are strong enough for this. Your latest tests show remarkable improvement. Then it's decided, I said, feeling more like myself than I had in weeks. Tomorrow morning, Minnie Harrington officially wakes up, and Jasper's carefully constructed plan begins to collapse. Detective Alvarez nodded approvingly. We'll increase security and monitoring. If he makes one wrong move— When? I corrected her. When he makes a wrong move. Jasper has spent years planning my death. He won't abandon that plan easily. The weight of what we were doing, essentially baiting a would-be murderer, settled over the room. But beneath the fear lurked something stronger, the determination to reclaim my life from the man who had tried to steal it. 17 days until the power of attorney deadline, I said, meeting each of their gazes in turn. Let's make them count. The morning light filtered through the hospital blinds as I reviewed the updated security protocols Lawrence had implemented. 2 private security officers stationed discreetly in the hall. Surveillance on all access points to my floor. restricted visitor clearance. The full weight of the Frost estate was now focused on one objective, keeping me alive long enough to reclaim my life. A soft knock at the door preceded the arrival of a tall, angular woman in her 60s, her silver hair cropped in an elegant, asymmetrical style that complemented her sharp cheekbones. Though I'd never met her in person, I recognized her immediately from the dossier Lawrence had provided. "Dr. Abigail Montgomery," she announced, extending a hand with long, tapered fingers. "Your uncle spoke very highly of you, Mrs. Harrington." "Please call me Minnie," I replied, taking her hand. The strength of her grip belied her age. "Then you must call me Abby. We don't have time for formalities given the circumstances." Dr. Montgomery had been my uncle's research partner for 30 years, the brilliant quantum physicist behind many of the Frost Technologies patents that had revolutionized computing. She was also, according to Lawrence, the executor of my uncle's security protocols and the person who had first suspected his poisoning. "I should have contacted you sooner," she said, taking the seat beside my bed. "Max made me promise to give you space, to let you approach us when you were ready. His sister, your mother, was quite firm about keeping you separate from the family business." Her mouth twisted slightly. "If I'd broken that promise earlier, perhaps we could have prevented all this." "You couldn't have known," I said, though the thought that my uncle had been watching over me from a distance all these years created a complicated ache of loss for a relationship that might have been. "But I did know," Abby replied, her gray eyes sharp with self-recrimination. "I knew the moment Max began showing symptoms, the digitalis, the gradual decline that looked like natural heart failure. I recognized the pattern from an earlier case, a competitor who died under similar circumstances 3 years ago. I warned Max, but by then it was too late." "You think Jasper was responsible for that death too?" The possibility that my husband was a serial poisoner made my blood run cold. "Not directly, no. But we believe he learned the method from whoever was. The financial patterns match. Large transfers, offshore accounts, the same Monaco banking group." She paused, pulling a slim tablet from her bag. "What do you know about quantum encryption, Minnie?" The abrupt change of topic threw me. "Only the basics from my patent work. Quantum keys that can't be duplicated or intercepted. Information that changes if observed." Precisely. Max's final project, his legacy, was a quantum encryption system so advanced it would render conventional security obsolete. No more hackable passwords, no more vulnerable financial systems. Absolute protection for sensitive information. "The banking industry would pay billions for that technology," I said, my attorney's mind immediately grasping the implications. "Trillions. Potentially. Every financial institution, every government agency, every corporation with data to protect would need it." Abby's expression darkened. "Or they could ensure it never reaches the market." Understanding dawned. "You think someone wants the technology buried, that Max was killed to stop its development, and you were poisoned to gain control of the patents," she confirmed. "Your husband has been meeting with representatives from a financial security consortium led by Winston Blackwood. Does the name sound familiar?" "Blackwood Global Securities," I said, the pieces clicking into place. "Yasmin's father." "Yasmin?" Abby raised an eyebrow. "Jasper's mistress. Her full name is Yasmin Blackwood." Abby made a note on her tablet. "Interesting. That connection wasn't in our files. It suggests Jasper's relationship with the Blackwood family goes deeper than we thought." "How long has Jasper been meeting with them?" "At least 18 months. Initially legitimate business meetings. Your husband manages investments for several Blackwood clients. But approximately 1 year ago, the meetings became more frequent and moved off-site. Private dinners, weekend retreats, secure conference facilities with no digital footprint. The betrayal expanded like a poisonous cloud, encompassing not just my marriage, but an entire conspiracy. Jasper hadn't just married me for potential access to my uncle's fortune. He'd positioned himself as the instrument of corporate sabotage against revolutionary technology. Maximilian suspected all of this, Abby continued, which is why he created the inheritance structure as he did. By leaving everything directly to you, with explicit exclusions for your husband, he forced their hand. They needed you eliminated, to gain control. But why me? Why not leave it to his research team, his company board, or even you? Abby's expression softened slightly. Because he trusted you. Because despite the family estrangement, he watched your career with immense pride. A brilliant legal mind with absolute integrity, he called you. The patents require not just a custodian, but an advocate who understands both the technology's potential and its ethical implications. He believed that was you. The responsibility settled on my shoulders like a physical weight. My uncle hadn't just left me wealth, he'd entrusted me with his life's work. There's something else, Abby said, her voice lowering. Something not in the official inheritance documents. Max created a failsafe, a quantum key containing the core algorithms of the encryption system. Without it, the existing patents are significant but incomplete. With it, the technology becomes fully implementable. Where is this key? That's the brilliant part. It's hidden using principles of quantum entanglement. Its location changes based on observer interactions, making it impossible to pinpoint. The only way to access it is through a series of biometric and cognitive challenges that Max designed specifically for you. For me? But I never even spoke with him as an adult. He knew you better than you realize. Every scientific paper you published, every legal brief you filed, every patent you defended, he studied them all. The challenges are based on your unique thought patterns, your problem-solving approaches. No one else can unlock it. Not me, not his research team, not the best hackers Blackwood could hire. Only you. The revelation that my estranged uncle had studied my work so carefully created a connection across time and distance that brought unexpected tears to my eyes. When can I begin these challenges? When you're stronger, Abby said firmly. The process is mentally taxing, but there's preparatory work we can start now. From her bag, she produced a small silver device resembling a thumb drive. This contains the quantum locator, the first step in finding the key. It needs to be calibrated to your neural patterns. Neural patterns? How? A series of cognitive exercises, perfectly safe even in your condition. Dr. Wallace has approved them. She smiled slightly. I may be a physicist, but I wouldn't risk Max's niece. He'd find a way to haunt me from whatever theoretical dimension he's currently exploring. Her dry humor reminded me that Abby had lost not just a colleague, but a lifelong friend when my uncle died. This was personal for her too. Before we begin, I said, I need to know everything. About Max, about the technology, about what Jasper and the Blackwoods might do next. Abby nodded, her expression grave. They've already begun moving against Frost Technologies, shell companies making lowball acquisition offers, rumors of patent vulnerabilities circulating among investors, and most concerning, 3 break-ins at the main laboratory in the past month. Looking for the quantum key, I guessed. Yes. And they'll continue searching until they find it or confirm it's beyond their reach. Her eyes met mine squarely. When Jasper discovers you're awake, truly, awake and cognizant of his actions, he'll be forced to accelerate his plans. The prenuptial agreement's incapacity clause won't help him if you're demonstrably capable of managing your affairs. So he'll need a more permanent solution, I said, giving voice to the threat hanging over me. Yes. Which is why we need to move. You as soon as medically possible. This hospital, despite our security measures, is too exposed. Move me where? To the place your uncle built specifically for this contingency, the Frost Institute's secure medical facility. It's a fortress mini, and it's where we'll begin the process of not just protecting you, but reclaiming everything that's been taken. For the first time since waking in the hospital, I felt something beyond fear and betrayal. A sense of purpose, of connection to the brilliant uncle I'd never really known. "When do we start?" I asked. Abby's smile was sharp as a scalpel. "We already have." Dr. Wallace frowned at the small screen displaying my latest test results. "Your recovery is remarkable, Minnie, but transferring you to another facility carries risks. The surgical site is still healing, and your cardiovascular system remains compromised from the poisoning." We were gathered in my hospital room, Dr. Wallace, Kelly, Lawrence, Abigail, Tobias, and Detective Alvarez, discussing the logistics of moving me to the Frost Institute. "What's riskier?" I asked quietly. "Moving me or leaving me where Jasper expects to find me?" Dr. Wallace sighed, removing his glasses to rub the bridge of his nose. "From a purely medical perspective, I'd prefer you remain here for at least another week. From a security perspective," he glanced at Detective Alvarez. "From a security perspective, this location becomes increasingly vulnerable once Mr. Harrington realizes his wife is fully conscious and aware of his activities," she finished. "Hospital security is designed to keep patients in, not determined killers out. The Frost Institute has a fully equipped medical wing," Abigail added. "Originally built for Max's specialized treatments, the staff there has experience with cardiac patients." Dr. Wallace nodded reluctantly. "If the medical director is Dr. Eliza Watkins, then yes, you'd be in excellent hands. She trained at Mayo before joining the Frost team." "Confirmed," Lawrence said, checking his tablet. "Dr. Watkins is preparing a room and reviewing Mrs. Harrington's case files as we speak." I looked around at these people who had become my lifeline, my son, my friend, my nurse, and these new allies who had appeared when I needed them most. Their concern was palpable, but beneath it lay something stronger. Determination. "What's our timeline?" I asked, directing the question to Detective Alvarez. "Mr. Harrington is scheduled to return at 2 p.m. with the estate attorney. That gives us approximately 4 hours to execute the transfer if we're moving you today. 4 hours. To disappear from the place Jasper expected to find me. 4 hours to shatter his carefully constructed plans." The thought sent a surge of both anxiety and resolve through me. "There's another consideration," Lawrence interjected gently. "The legal implications of this move. Once you leave this hospital against medical advice and essentially disappear, Mr. Harrington could petition the court for emergency conservatorship on grounds of mental instability. He'd claim I'm not mentally competent to make my own decisions," I translated, the legal maneuvering immediately clear to me. "Precisely. He could argue that your actions demonstrate impaired judgment resulting from your medical condition. Then we need to establish my competency before I leave," I said, the solution forming as I spoke. "Official psychiatric evaluation, cognitive testing, legal documentation of my decision-making capacity." Kelly nodded approvingly. "I've already contacted Dr. Vivian Mercer. She's the leading forensic psychiatrist in the state and has experience testifying in competency hearings. She can be here within the hour." "And we'll need video documentation," I continued, my legal mind fully engaged for the first time in weeks. Recorded statement explaining my decision to transfer. Acknowledgement of the medical risks. Clear articulation of why I believe this is necessary. "I can arrange the recording through my department," Detective Alvarez offered. "It would be admissible. In court if needed." "What about your medical records?" Dr. Wallace asked. "Mr. Harrington currently has access as your spouse." "Revocation of information access," I replied. "I'll sign the HIPAA forms immediately." The energy in the room had shifted. What had begun as a concerned discussion about my safety had transformed into a strategic planning session, with me at its center. For weeks I had been the victim, the patient, the target. Now I was reclaiming my agency, my voice, my power. Tobias, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke. "You're really doing this, Mom? Disappearing from your life?" The uncertainty in his voice reminded me that for all his brilliance, He was still a young man watching his world crumble. His mother nearly died. His stepfather revealed as a would-be murderer. His future suddenly uncertain. "Not disappearing from my life, Toby," I said gently. "Reclaiming it. There's a difference. What about our house, your career, everything you've built? Houses can be replaced, careers can be rebuilt. But my life, and the work your great-uncle entrusted to me, can't be." His expression remained troubled. "And what about me? Where do I fit in this new reality?" The question cut to the heart of maternal fear. In focusing on survival, had I neglected to consider what these changes would mean for my son? "You fit wherever you choose," I told, him reaching for his hand. "You can come with me to the institute. There's research facilities that would benefit your work. Or you can return to Stanford with additional security, or something else entirely. But whatever you decide, you're not alone in this, Toby." He squeezed my hand, his expression softening slightly. "I'm not letting you face this without me, Mom. I just needed to hear you say it's still us against the world, like it was before Jasper." "Always," I promised, memories flooding back of the years when it had been just Tobias and me, before Jasper entered our lives. The tiny apartment we'd shared while I built my career, the weekend science experiments at the kitchen table, the promise I'd made to always prioritize his well-being above all else, a promise I'd inadvertently broken by marrying a man who had brought such danger into our lives. "Then I'm coming with you," he said with newfound resolve. "My research can continue anywhere with an internet connection and a lab." The weight that had pressed against my chest lightened slightly. Whatever came next, my son would face it by my side. "There's another matter we need to address," Lawrence said, his expression grave. "The financial situation. Mr. Harrington has already transferred approximately $4.2 million from your joint accounts and personal funds. Once you make this move, he'll likely attempt to liquidate any remaining assets." "Can we freeze the accounts?" I asked. "Some, yes. Accounts in your name only can be protected immediately. Joint accounts are more complicated, but we can file emergency petitions citing fraud and criminal activity." "Do it," I said firmly. "Freeze everything possible, and prepare documentation for the transfers Jasper has already made. We'll need those records for both criminal charges and civil recovery." Detective Alvarez made notes on her tablet. "The forensic accountants at my department have already begun tracing the Monaco transfers. We've identified approximately $3.1 million of the funds. That leaves over $1 million unaccounted for," Kelly observed. "We'll find it," I said, with more confidence than I felt. "But right now, securing what remains is the priority." The room fell silent as the enormity of what we were undertaking settled over us. I was about to vanish from my own life, from the hospital where Jasper expected to find me, from the home we'd shared for 18 years, from the carefully constructed existence that had proven to be built on betrayal. "This is the point of no return," Abigail said quietly, giving voice to what everyone was thinking. "Once we begin this process, there's no going back to your old life, Minnie, not until Jasper is dealt with. Legally, financially, permanently." The finality of her words should have terrified me. Instead, I felt a strange sense of liberation. The life I was leaving had been constructed on lies. The future, uncertain as it was, at least had the virtue of truth. I made my decision the moment I saw the security footage of Jasper poisoning my champagne, I said, my voice steady and clear. "I'm not going back to a life with a man who tried to murder me. I'm going forward, to justice, to truth, and to whatever future I can build from the ashes of his betrayal." Dr. Wallace checked his watch. "If we're doing this today, we need to begin preparations now. The medical transport team needs at least 2 hours' notice." I nodded, a sense of calm purpose, replacing the lingering shock and betrayal of recent weeks. "Make the calls," I said. "It's time to wake up. Not just from this hospital bed, but from the 18-year illusion of my marriage. As the team dispersed to their various tasks, Tobias remained by my side, his expression a mixture of concern and pride. "You know what Jasper used to say about you?" he asked after a moment. "What?" "That you were too trusting, too willing to see the good in people." A small, sad smile touched his lips. "I think he's about to discover just how formidable you can be when that trust is broken." The Frost Institute rose from the coastal cliffs like a modernist dream, glass and steel reflecting the afternoon sunlight, its angular architecture seeming to defy gravity. As the medical transport helicopter descended toward the private landing pad, I caught my first glimpse of the facility where my uncle had created his technological revolution. "Impressive, isn't it?" Abigail shouted over the rotor noise. "Max designed it himself, said conventional buildings produced conventional thinking." 24 hours had passed since our decision to leave the hospital. Dr. Mercer's psychiatric evaluation had confirmed my mental competency beyond any legal challenge. The recorded statement explaining my decision to transfer was stored in multiple secure locations. And most importantly, I had disappeared from Westlake Memorial 3 hours before Jasper arrived with his estate attorney. "What happened when he found my room empty?" I asked as medical staff helped transfer me from the helicopter to a waiting gurney. "Detective Alvarez said he nearly had a stroke himself," Tobias replied, grinning despite the seriousness of our situation. "Demanded to know where you'd been taken, threatened to sue the hospital, the whole dramatic performance. Until Dr. Wallace informed him that you had revoked his access to your medical information and exercised your right to transfer to a facility of your choosing," Abigail added. Apparently, he turned quite pale at that point. The momentary satisfaction faded as we entered the building. Jasper wouldn't give up easily. If anything, this development would push him toward more desperate measures. The medical wing of the Frost Institute resembled a luxury spa more than a hospital. My private suite featured panoramic ocean views, state-of-the-art medical equipment disguised within sleek cabinetry, and security features subtly integrated into the design. Biometric locks, bulletproof glass, and a security team with military training, Lawrence explained as I was settled into my new accommodations. Plus surveillance covering every approach to the building. "We've also implemented digital security protocols," Abigail added. "Mr. Harrington's electronic signature has been flagged in our systems. Any attempt to access Institute resources will trigger immediate alerts." Dr. Eliza Watkins, the medical director Abigail had mentioned, arrived to review my condition. In her 50s with cropped auburn hair and intelligent eyes behind stylish glasses, she projected calm competence. "Your recovery is quite remarkable given the circumstances," she noted, reviewing my charts. "The cardio damage from the digitalis is healing well, though we'll need to monitor your heart function closely for the next several months." "Will I have permanent damage?" I asked, the question I'd been afraid to pose at Westlake. "Some minor scarring on the heart muscle, but nothing that should significantly impact your quality of life with proper management." She smiled reassuringly. "You're extraordinarily lucky, Mrs. Harrington. Most digitalis poisonings at that concentration are fatal." "Not luck," I corrected quietly. "A sommelier who recognized the symptoms and ignored my husband's attempts to prevent treatment." Dr. Watkins nodded gravely. "Then you owe him your life. Now, regarding your recovery here, I understand there are some cognitive exercises Dr. Montgomery wishes to begin?" "Yes," Abigail confirmed. "The quantum locator calibration. Non-invasive. Neural mapping through problem-solving tasks." "I've reviewed the protocols," Dr. Watkins said. "From a medical perspective, they're safe to proceed with, though I recommend limiting sessions to 30 minutes initially to prevent fatigue." After Dr. Watkins departed, Abigail brought out the silver device she'd shown me at the hospital. "Are you ready to begin, Minnie?" Despite my exhaustion from the transfer, curiosity and determination won out. "Yes. Show me what my uncle created." The quantum locator, it turned out, wasn't merely a storage device but an interface designed to map my cognitive patterns through a series of increasingly complex problems. These aren't standard IQ tests, Abigail explained as she set up the equipment. They're problems Max designed specifically based on your published work, particularly your approach to biochemical patent analysis. The first challenge appeared on the screen, a complex molecular structure with multiple possible configurations. Identify the patentable element, the prompt read. I studied the structure, recognition dawning. This is similar to the Brenner case I worked on 5 years ago. A pharmaceutical company was attempting to patent a molecule that was essentially identical to a naturally occurring compound with one subtle modification. Abigail smiled. Max followed that case closely. He said your brief was elegantly brutal in dismantling their claim. I analyzed the structure on screen, identifying the single element that would make it patentable, a subtle but significant alteration to the binding site that would change its functional properties. Here, I said, marking the section. This modification creates novel functionality not found in nature. The screen flashed green in confirmation. Pattern recognized. It displayed briefly before presenting a new, more complex challenge. For the next 30 minutes, I worked through problems ranging from patent law applications to ethical frameworks for technology implementation. Some referenced cases I'd worked on directly. Others drew from articles I'd published or speeches I'd given. All required not just correct answers, but my specific approach to reaching those answers. It's mapping my thought patterns, I realized as the session concluded. Not just testing what I know, but how I think. Exactly, Abigail confirmed. The quantum key Max created doesn't just require your biometric data, fingerprints, retinal scans, DNA. It requires your cognitive signature, your unique way of approaching problems. Something Jasper couldn't force me to provide even if he had. Access to me, I noted, understanding the brilliance of the security measure. And something that can't be replicated through artificial intelligence or computational methods. Abigail disconnected the device. The quantum nature of the key means it exists in multiple potential states simultaneously until observed by the correct cognitive pattern. Yours. As a patent attorney specializing in biochemical innovations, I had encountered countless security systems designed to protect intellectual property. But nothing approached the elegance of what my uncle had created, a key that could only be unlocked by the specific thought patterns of his chosen heir. How many sessions will we need? I asked. 5 to 7, depending on how quickly the system maps your cognitive signature. Then we begin the actual decryption process. The implications were staggering. Not only had my uncle built an unhackable encryption system that could revolutionize global finance, but he had secured it with my mind as the only key. No wonder Jasper wanted me dead, rather than incapacitated, I said quietly. He knew, or suspected, that my uncle had made me essential to accessing the technology. Which raises another question, Tobias interjected from where he'd been observing by the window. How did he know? Uncle Max kept his work compartmentalized, even from his closest collaborators. How did Jasper connect you to the quantum key? Abigail's expression darkened. That's what troubles me as well. The quantum key protocol was known to only 3 people: Max, myself, and Dr. Evelyn Sato, our head of security architecture. Could there have been a leak? I asked. Possibly, though our security protocols are exceptionally rigorous. Abigail hesitated. There's another possibility, that Jasper's connection to Blackwood Global Securities provided him with intelligence we haven't identified. Corporate espionage, Tobias suggested. Industrial spying is common in competitive tech sectors. But this goes beyond standard corporate competition, I noted. My years working with technology patents informing my analysis. The quantum encryption system Max developed wouldn't just give its owner a market advantage, it would fundamentally reshape global financial security. Trillions of dollars, Abigail confirmed, and more importantly, control over the infrastructure of digital finance itself. The scale of what my uncle had entrusted to me became clearer. This wasn't merely inheritance of wealth. It was stewardship of a technology with world-changing implications. "We need to identify Jasper's information source," I said decisively. "If he knew about my connection to the quantum key, he may have other intelligence about Frost technologies that we're not aware of." Abigail nodded in agreement. "I'll have our security team review all communications and access logs for the past 3 years, focusing on any potential vulnerabilities. And I'll reach out to Detective Alvarez," Tobias added. "The police investigation might uncover connections we can't see from here." As they discussed security measures, I found myself contemplating the specialized knowledge that had defined my career, the intricate interplay of biochemical innovation, patent law, and ethical oversight. Knowledge that my uncle had recognized and valued enough to make it the cornerstone of his legacy's protection. For 18 years, Jasper had dismissed my career as secondary to his own, treating my legal expertise as a quaint hobby rather than the sophisticated specialization it was. He had underestimated me professionally, just as he had underestimated me personally. That underestimation would be his downfall. "There's something else we should consider," I said, interrupting their discussion. "My professional network. I've spent 20 years building relationships in biochemical patent law. Those connections could help us understand how Blackwood might be approaching this technology from a legal acquisition standpoint." Abigail looked intrigued. "You think they might be pursuing legitimate channels alongside Jasper's more direct approach?" "It would be standard practice. Multiple acquisition strategies running in parallel, hostile takeover attempts, legitimate purchase offers, and—" I hesitated. "And elimination of key personnel who could block their efforts," Tobias finished grimly. I nodded. My colleagues at Brenner and Winthrop specialized in defending against predatory acquisition tactics. They might see patterns in Blackwood's recent activities that were missing. For the first time since waking in the hospital, I felt the familiar intellectual engagement that had defined my professional life. The strategic analysis of complex problems, the identification of legal vulnerabilities and protections. "Use my knowledge," I murmured, almost to myself. "That's what Max intended all along." In creating a security system that only I could unlock, my uncle hadn't just protected his technology. He had ensured that the person controlling its future would approach it with the specialized legal and ethical framework he valued. He had seen in me not just a relative, but a mind uniquely qualified to shepherd his legacy. "We begin again tomorrow," Abigail said, gathering her equipment. "Rest now, Minnie. The quantum key has waited this long. It can wait one more night." As she and Tobias left me to rest, I gazed out at the ocean beyond my windows, my thoughts clearer than they had been in weeks. Jasper had married me for potential access to wealth. He had tried to kill me when that wealth seemed within his grasp. But he had never truly seen or valued the very thing that would now be his undoing, my mind. 3 days after my arrival at the Frost Institute, my recovery room had transformed into a command center. Digital displays covered one wall, monitoring everything from Jasper's financial movements to Blackwood Global Security's recent acquisitions. The conference table overlooking the ocean hosted a rotating cast of specialists, each bringing unique expertise to our growing operation. "Jasper filed an emergency petition this morning," Kelly announced, striding into the room with her tablet in hand. "He's claiming you're being held against your will by opportunistic associates of Maximilian Frost who are taking advantage of your compromised mental state." "Predictable," Lawrence commented, not looking up from the legal documents he was reviewing. "Judge Harriman denied the petition pending the results of an independent psychiatric evaluation, which we've already completed," I noted, feeling a step ahead for the first time since waking in the hospital. "Dr. Mercer's assessment is unimpeachable. Jasper's getting desperate. Tobias observed from his workstation, where he'd been analyzing Blackwood's patent applications for the past year. Filing motions he knows won't succeed just to create a paper trail of concern. It's more than desperation, came a new voice from the doorway. It's a coordinated legal strategy designed to exhaust your resources and credibility. The woman who entered was unfamiliar to me, though Lawrence immediately stood to greet her. Tall and striking in a precisely tailored suit, she carried herself with the unmistakable confidence of someone accustomed to commanding attention. "Minnie, this is Judge Camille Rios," Lawrence introduced her. "Retired from the federal circuit, and one of the foremost authorities on patent law and corporate litigation. Before my judicial appointment, I specialized in cases involving corporate espionage in the technology sector," Judge Rios explained, taking a seat at the table. Lawrence thought my perspective might be useful given the circumstances. "Judge, Rios mentored me through law school," Lawrence added. "There's no one who understands the intersection of technology patents and corporate criminality better." Another ally, another specialist. The network surrounding me continued to expand, each member bringing critical skills to our collective defense. "What can you tell us about Blackwood's approach?" I asked, grateful for this new perspective. "Based on the documentation Lawrence shared, they're employing what we call a multiple vector attack," Judge Rios explained, her analytical precision immediately apparent. Simultaneous legal, financial, and unfortunately, personal pressure points. To gain control of the quantum encryption technology, she spread several documents on the table. Their legal filings follow a pattern I've seen before, creating a paper trail of concern about the mental capacity of key patent holders, establishing grounds for regulatory intervention, and positioning themselves as the responsible stewards of abandoned technology, while simultaneously attempting to murder the actual patent holder, Tobias muttered darkly. Judge Rios nodded grimly. The escalation to violence indicates the extraordinary value they place on this technology. This isn't about competitive advantage, it's about fundamental control of future financial infrastructure. As Judge Rios outlined Blackwood's likely strategies, Dr. Nolan Way, the Institute's chief of cybersecurity, entered with his own update. "We've identified the breach," he announced without preamble, his usual directness a refreshing contrast to corporate politeness. 6 months ago, someone compromised Dr. Sato's personal email account. The infiltration was sophisticated, AI, targeted spear phishing attack that provided access to her communications with Maximilian about the quantum key protocols, including the designation of his niece as the cognitive key holder, Abigail concluded, the missing piece of our puzzle, finally fitting into place. "Precisely," Dr. Way confirmed. "The breach was subtle enough that our standard security sweeps didn't detect it. We only found it because we knew exactly what to look for. So Jasper has known for at least 6 months that I'm essential to accessing the quantum encryption technology," I said, the timeline aligning with when my uncle's health had begun to deteriorate, which explains the timing of both Maximilian's poisoning and your own, Detective Alvarez noted, joining the conversation from where she'd been reviewing security footage. "Once Jasper confirmed your role, the clock started ticking. The orchestrated nature of what had happened to me, to my uncle, was still difficult to fully absorb. Not a crime of passion or opportunity, but a calculated corporate conspiracy spanning months, possibly years." The door opened again to admit Philippe Dumont, the sommelier whose quick thinking had saved my life at the restaurant. Now dressed in casual clothes rather than his formal restaurant attire, he still carried himself with the precise dignity that had first caught my attention that night. "Mr. Dumont," I said warmly, extending my hand. "I can finally thank you properly for saving my life." His grip was firm, his expression serious. "I am relieved to see you recovering, Mrs. Harrington, though I regret I did not recognize what was happening sooner." "You recognized it when it mattered most," I assured him. "But I'm curious. What brought you to the Frost Institute? Detective Alvarez mentioned you would provide a statement, but I didn't expect you to travel here." I came because I have information beyond what happened that night, he explained, his French accent more pronounced with his evident concern. Information about your husband's previous visits to the restaurant. The room fell silent. All attention focused on Philippe. Mr. Harrington dined at Le Cirque 6 times in the past year, he continued. 5 of those occasions were with the same companion, a young woman and an older gentleman who I now recognize from the news as Winston Blackwood. Yasmin and her father, I murmured, the betrayal layering upon itself like sedimentary rock, each stratum revealing a longer history of deception. Yes. And during those dinners, they often spoke of technical matters, encryption, quantum computing, financial security protocols. I served their table personally each time, due to Mr. Harrington's status as a preferred client. Philippe hesitated, his discomfort evident. The sommelier's position provides unique access. Guests often speak freely, assuming we are focused only on the wine, not their conversations. You overheard their discussions, Judge Rios surmised. Fragments, yes. Enough to know they were planning something significant involving Frost Technologies. The most recent dinner, 3 weeks before your anniversary, was particularly intense. Mr. Blackwood was insistent that they were running out of time and that more direct measures might be necessary. The implications hung heavy in the air. Not just Jasper's betrayal, but a documented conspiracy involving Blackwood leadership, discussed openly enough that a sommelier had pieced it together. Would you be willing to provide a formal statement? Detective Alvarez asked, already reaching for her recording device. This could be crucial evidence connecting Blackwood to the attempts on Mrs. Harrington's life. Philippe nodded solemnly. That is why I came. What I witnessed goes beyond poor behavior in a restaurant. It was the planning of something terrible. As Detective Alvarez led Philippe to a quieter room to record his statement, I looked around at the assembled team. Legal experts, security, specialists, technology innovators, law enforcement professionals, and even a sommelier with an ethical compass and critical information. Our network grows stronger, Lawrence observed, following my gaze. Each person bringing unique perspectives and capabilities. While Jasper grows more isolated, Kelly added. The emergency petition today was filed by a junior associate, not the senior partner who usually handles his legal matters. His regular firm may be distancing themselves as they learn more details. The contrast was striking. Jasper had built his plan on isolation, removing my uncle, attempting to eliminate me, controlling access to information. Our counter-strategy was built on connection, diverse expertise, shared knowledge, overlapping capabilities. We should bring in one more specialist, I decided, a new possibility forming. Someone with direct knowledge of quantum encryption, market dynamics. Who did you have in mind? Abigail asked. Dr. Sophia Lindstrom at MIT. She consulted on several biochemical encryption patent cases I handled. She understands both the technology and its market implications. Tobias looked up from his screen. The Lindstrom who published the definitive paper on quantum entanglement in financial security systems? The same, I confirmed. She's also been a vocal critic of monopolistic control of security architecture. If anyone can help us understand how to position this technology to prevent Blackwood from gaining control through other means, it's her. Lawrence made a note. I'll arrange for her to join us securely. As the team returned to their various tasks, I found myself reflecting on the network forming around me. Some, like Kelly and Tobias, were connections from my life before. Others, like Abigail and Lawrence, had emerged from my uncle's world. Still others, like Philippe and Judge Rios, had appeared in response to the crisis itself. Together, they created something Jasper could never match with all his wealth and corporate connections. A coalition united not by profit or power, but by commitment to justice and truth. You know what Jasper never understood about me? I said quietly to Kelly as we watched the team at work. He thought my professional success came from technical knowledge alone. He never recognized that my greatest strength was building relationships with the right people. Kelly smiled. A lesson he's learning too late. Much too late, I agreed, as Dr. Wei announced another breakthrough in tracking the offshore accounts where Jasper had hidden my money. The man who had tried to isolate and eliminate me was about to face the full force of a network he never knew existed. Financial patterns tell stories if you know how to read them, Dr. Sophia Lindstrom observed, her fingers dancing across the digital display as she traced the labyrinth of transactions linking Blackwood Global Securities to various shell companies. And this particular story is quite illuminating. Dr. Lindstrom had arrived at the Frost Institute the previous evening, a brilliant economist with an unusual dual specialization in quantum physics and financial systems. At 58, her silver-streaked dark hair pulled back in a practical bun, she brought a methodical precision to our investigation that had already yielded critical insights. The Cayman Islands transfers we already knew about, she continued, highlighting several transaction clusters on the sprawling financial map. But look here, parallel movements through Singapore, then Liechtenstein, finally consolidating in a holding company registered in Malta. Classic layering technique, Detective Alvarez noted, designed to obscure the source of funds and make them difficult to trace. But traceable nonetheless, Dr. Lindstrom replied with the satisfied smile of someone who had spent a career unraveling such deceptions. Especially when the pattern repeats across multiple accounts. For 5 days now, our team had been methodically gathering information, financial records, corporate filings, communications logs, security footage, assembling the puzzle pieces of the conspiracy against me and my uncle. The same pattern appears in the transactions following 3 other suspicious deaths, Lawrence observed, indicating similar clusters associated with dates I now recognized all too well. Arthur Chen, former chief security architect at Quantum Shield, Abigail identified the first. Hiking accident 3 years ago, shortly after declining Blackwood's acquisition offer. Elena Volkov, quantum cryptography pioneer, Tobias continued, pointing to the second cluster. Apparent suicide 2 years ago, though her family insisted she had no history of depression. And most recently, Rafael Morales, venture capitalist who was backing a competing encryption protocol. Kelly completed the grim list. Carbon monoxide poisoning in his home 8 months ago. The pattern was unmistakable, competitors or obstacles. To Blackwood's apparent plan for dominating quantum encryption, all eliminated through deaths that appeared accidental or natural, each followed by the same distinctive financial movements we now recognized in the aftermath of my uncle's death. They've been systematically removing anyone who could challenge their control of next-generation financial security architecture, Dr. Lindstrom concluded. Your uncle was simply the most significant target. And I was collateral damage, I said quietly. Or rather, meant to be. Dr. Wei had been monitoring Jasper's digital footprint throughout our investigation. Your husband has been making increasingly desperate attempts to locate you, he reported, bringing up a new display. Multiple inquiries to hospitals within a 500-mile radius, private investigators hired in 3 states, even an attempt to access the GPS data from your phone, which leads nowhere since we're using secure Institute devices now, Abigail added, with satisfaction. What's most interesting isn't his search for you, Dr. Wei continued, but his parallel communications with Blackwood executives. The frequency and encryption level suggest growing urgency. They're panicking, Judge Rios observed. Each day that passes with Mrs. Harrington beyond their reach is another day the quantum encryption technology remains secure. And another day for us to build our case, Detective Alvarez added, approaching, with a fresh stack of documents. The forensic analysis of your anniversary dinner champagne bottle is complete. Definitive traces of digitalis consistent with the concentration found in your blood work. She laid out several photographs. More importantly, we've recovered security footage from the restaurant's back service corridor. It clearly shows your Husband accessing the staff area 17 minutes before your collapse, carrying what appears to be a small vial. The evidence was mounting. Financial trails, witness statements, security footage, toxicology reports, each piece strengthening the case against Jasper and his Blackwood collaborators. "There's something else," Tobias said, his expression troubled as he examined a new set of financial records. "The Monaco account where Jasper transferred the bulk of your funds, $3.1 million, was emptied yesterday." "He's running," Kelly surmised. "Not necessarily," Dr. Lindstrom countered, studying the transaction details. "The funds were moved to a new account structure with different security protocols. This looks less like someone preparing to flee and more like someone consolidating resources for a specific purpose." "What purpose?" I asked, though I feared I already knew the answer. "Based on similar patterns I've studied in corporate takeover attempts, I'd say he's preparing for a major expenditure," Dr. Lindstrom explained. "Possibly related to locating you or accessing the quantum key through alternative means." "What alternative means could exist?" Lawrence asked, turning to Abigail. "You said the quantum key was secured by Mrs. Harrington's cognitive patterns." "It is," Abigail confirmed, "but there are always theoretical vulnerabilities in any system. If they've recruited someone with sufficient expertise in quantum computing, they might attempt to brute force the encryption," Dr. Wei finished, his expression grim. "Not through computational power, which would be impossible even with the most advanced quantum computers, but through manipulation of the quantum state itself." "In English, please," Kelly requested. "They might try to create a skeleton key by simulating cognitive patterns similar to Mrs. Harrington's," Dr. Wei explained. "It would require enormous resources and cutting-edge quantum technology, but for control of global financial security architecture, it would be worth the investment," Judge Rios concluded. The implications were staggering. Not only was Jasper continuing his efforts to find me, but Blackwood might be pursuing a parallel strategy to break my uncle's quantum encryption through technological means. "How close am I to completing the cognitive mapping process?" I asked Abigail, suddenly aware that we might be racing against a technological clock as well as a legal one. "We've completed 4 sessions," she replied. "The system indicates 87% pattern recognition. 1 more session should be sufficient to complete the mapping." "Then we do it today," I decided. "If they're trying to create a skeleton key, we need to secure the actual key first." As arrangements were made for the final cognitive mapping session, Dr. Lindstrom continued her analysis of the financial web surrounding Blackwood's activities. "There's an interesting anomaly here," she noted, highlighting a series of transactions. "Regular payments from a Blackwood subsidiary to a medical research foundation specializing in cardiac pharmacology." "Digitalis research?" Detective Alvarez asked, immediately alert. "Not explicitly, but their published work includes several papers on cardiac glycosides, the family of compounds that includes digitalis." Dr. Lindstrom enlarged the transaction details. "The payments began 3 years ago and increased significantly 8 months before your uncle's death. Research and development for the perfect murder weapon," Tobias said bitterly, "tailoring the dose and delivery method." Another piece of the puzzle fell into place, not just opportunity and motive, but methodical preparation. Blackwood hadn't simply decided to eliminate obstacles. They had invested in developing the optimal means to do so undetected. "We need to get the Foundation's research records," Detective Alvarez said, already reaching for her phone. "With a clear financial connection to Blackwood and the timing correlation with the deaths, we might have enough for search warrants." As our team continued their various investigations, I found myself drawn to the quantum locator device that would complete my cognitive mapping. The elegant silver object represented both my uncle's trust in me and the technological revolution he had created, a revolution worth killing for, apparently. "We've scheduled the final mapping session for 3 p.m., Abigail informed me, following my gaze. "Dr. Watkins has cleared you medically for the procedure." "And once it's complete? What then?" Then we begin the actual decryption process, she explained. Your completed cognitive map will interact with the quantum key, essentially observing it from the precise perspective needed to collapse its quantum state into the correct configuration. The scientific elegance of the system was breathtaking. Security based not on computational complexity, but on the fundamental quantum principle that observation affects reality. Only when observed through the lens of my specific thought patterns would the key resolve into its usable form. My uncle was a genius, I said softly. Yes, Abigail agreed with a sad smile. And like many geniuses, he understood the human elements of security as well as the technological ones. He knew the greatest vulnerability in any system is people, their greed, their ambition, their capacity for betrayal. And their capacity for loyalty, I added, looking around at the team working tirelessly to protect his legacy and my life. As the various threads of our investigation continued to weave together, I felt a growing sense of momentum. The scattered fragments of information were coalescing into a coherent picture of corruption and conspiracy that extended far beyond my failed marriage. Jasper was just one piece of this, I realized aloud. An important one, but still just an instrument in Blackwood's larger strategy. An instrument that failed, Kelly reminded me. You survived. The quantum key remains secure, and every hour, we gather more evidence against them all. The information we were accumulating wasn't just building a legal case, it was constructing a shield around me and a spear aimed at those who had tried to destroy me. Knowledge, as my uncle had clearly believed, was the ultimate power. And for the first time since waking in the hospital, I was beginning to believe we might actually win. Day 57, Lawrence announced as he entered the command center, his typically composed demeanor showing rare signs of tension. We have less than 72 hours before Jasper's legal team can file for power of attorney under the incapacity clause. Though we had been building our case methodically, the clock continued its relentless countdown. The amended prenuptial agreement specified that after 60 days of medical incapacity, Jasper could petition for control of my financial affairs, a deadline that now loomed dangerously close. The court's psychiatric evaluation is scheduled for tomorrow morning, Kelly reminded us, checking her calendar. Dr. Mercer has prepared extensive documentation supporting your mental competency, but Judge Rothwell is known to be conservative in these matters. We need to be strategic about our timing, Judge Rios advised, her judicial experience invaluable in navigating the legal complexities we faced. File too early, and we risk giving Blackwood time to counter. Wait too long, and we may miss our window entirely. The timing wasn't just crucial for legal filings. Every aspect of our counterattack required precise coordination, the completion of my cognitive mapping, the securing of the quantum key, the financial recovery actions, and the criminal charges against Jasper and his co-conspirators. Blackwood's annual shareholder meeting is in 4 days, Dr. Lindstrom noted, pointing to the financial calendar displayed on one of our screens. Their stock has risen 12% since rumors began circulating about a revolutionary security acquisition in the pipeline. They're positioning themselves for a major announcement, Abigail concluded, likely planning to unveil control of the quantum encryption technology, either through their efforts to create a skeleton key or through Jasper's legal control of your assets. Which gives us a hard deadline, I said, the strategic landscape becoming clear. We need to move before that shareholder meeting. Dr. Wei had been monitoring Blackwood's quantum computing facility through satellite imagery and power consumption data. Their energy usage spiked 48 hours ago and has remained at unprecedented levels, he reported. Consistent with a major computational effort. The skeleton key attempt, Tobias translated, his expression grim. How long would such an effort take? I asked, urgently needing to understand our timeline. Impossible to predict precisely, Dr. Wei admitted. With their resources and the latest quantum computing architecture, anywhere from 3 days to 2 weeks. But given the power signatures we're seeing, they're operating at maximum capacity, burning through resources to accelerate the process. "They're racing us to the finish line," Detective Alvarez observed. The layers of timing created a complex strategic equation. The legal deadline of day 60, the shareholder meeting in 4 days, Blackwood's accelerating technological efforts, and at the center, my own recovery and the completion of the cognitive mapping process needed to secure the quantum key. "We need to create a comprehensive timeline," I decided, moving to the central display. Every action, every filing, every move precisely scheduled for maximum impact. Together, we constructed a strategic sequence, each element carefully positioned for optimal effect. Day 57, today. Complete the final cognitive mapping session. Day 58, tomorrow. Pass court-ordered psychiatric evaluation in the morning. Begin. Quantum key decryption process in the afternoon. File initial criminal complaints against Jasper based on poisoning evidence. Day 59. Execute financial recovery actions to reclaim stolen funds. File RICO charges against Blackwood executives based on pattern of deaths and financial evidence. Day 60. Make public statement revealing Blackwood's conspiracy and the true nature of the quantum encryption technology exactly 1 hour before their shareholder meeting. The timing of the public statement is particularly crucial, Judge Rios noted. Too early, and they have time to prepare a counter-narrative. Too late, and the financial damage may already be done. 1 hour before their shareholder meeting creates maximum disruption with minimum response time, Dr. Lindstrom agreed. Their stock will plummet before they can even begin damage control. As we refined our timeline, Dr. Watkins arrived to update us on my medical progress. "Your cardiac function has improved significantly," she reported, reviewing my latest test results. "Still not at pre-poisoning levels, but sufficient for moderate activity, including the cognitive mapping session scheduled for this afternoon." The pieces were falling into place, our counter-strategy taking shape with the same precision that had once characterized my legal work on complex patent cases. The timing would need to be perfect, a precisely choreographed sequence of actions designed to reclaim my life and protect my uncle's legacy. "What about Jasper himself?" Tobias asked, the personal element of our struggle never far from his thoughts. "Where does he fit in this timeline?" Detective Alvarez consulted her notes. "Based on our surveillance, he's currently in New York, meeting with Blackwood executives. He's scheduled to return tomorrow afternoon, presumably to prepare for the yacht." Day 60 filing? "Perfect," I said, the final element clicking into place. "He'll arrive just in time to find his world collapsing around him." As our team dispersed to prepare for their various roles in the coming days, I found myself contemplating the bitter irony. Jasper had poisoned me, believing time was on his side, that each day of my incapacity brought him closer to controlling my uncle's fortune. Now, that same clock was counting down to his destruction. Timing, it seemed, was everything. The quantum locator hummed softly as it completed its final calibration sequence. After 4 previous sessions mapping my cognitive patterns, this 5th and final session would complete the process, creating the unique neural key needed to access my uncle's revolutionary technology. "Try to relax," Abigail advised, adjusting the delicate sensors. "The system works best when your thought patterns flow naturally." Relaxation seemed impossible given everything at stake, but I closed my eyes and focused on my breathing. Techniques. Dr. Watkins had taught me to manage stress during recovery. Gradually, my racing thoughts settled into the analytical clarity that had defined my professional life. The final mapping session was more intensive than previous ones, presenting complex, ethical and legal scenarios drawn from my published work in court cases. Each problem required not just solutions but justifications, testing both my knowledge and my reasoning process. 2 hours later, the device chimed softly. "Cognitive mapping complete," Abigail announced, her voice carrying a note of triumph. 100% pattern recognition achieved. The first crucial preparation was complete. With my neural signature fully mapped, we could proceed to the actual decryption of the quantum key, but not until after tomorrow's court-mandated psychiatric evaluation. Across the Frost Institute, similar preparations were underway. In the legal suite, Kelly and Lawrence worked with Judge Rios to finalize the criminal complaints against Jasper, ensuring every detail was properly documented and every procedure meticulously followed. The poisoning evidence is irrefutable, Kelly reported during our evening strategy session. The toxicology reports, the restaurant footage, Philippe's testimony, it creates an airtight case for attempted murder. The financial crimes are equally solid, Lawrence added. We've documented every unauthorized transfer, every forged signature, every offshore account. The paper trail is comprehensive. Detective Alvarez had been coordinating with federal authorities on the broader conspiracy case. The FBI's Financial Crimes Unit is prepared to execute simultaneous warrants on Blackwood's offices in New York, London, and Singapore, she informed us. They're particularly interested in the pattern of deaths connected to competing quantum encryption technologies. As the legal preparations advanced, Dr. Wei and his cybersecurity team established digital tripwires around all Frost technology systems. If anyone attempts to access the quantum encryption architecture, we'll know immediately, he assured us. And we've implemented additional quantum-hardened security protocols around the core patents. Dr. Lindstrom had been working with financial regulators, preparing them for the market impact of our revelations. The SEC has been quietly briefed on potential securities fraud related to Blackwood's shareholder communications, she explained. They're prepared to suspend trading the moment our evidence becomes public. Even Nurse Sasha from the hospital had joined our efforts, coordinating with Dr. Watkins to ensure all medical documentation was properly prepared for the court proceedings. Your complete medical history has been secured, she reported, including the initial misdiagnosis and subsequent discovery of digitalis poisoning. The preparation extended to physical security as well. The Frost Institute's protection team, led by former Special Forces Commander Marcus Rivera, had transformed the facility into a virtual fortress. We've implemented 3-layer perimeter security, Rivera explained, displaying the security schematic. Biometric access controls, motion detection systems, and 24-hour armed patrols. No one enters without complete verification. My son had taken on perhaps the most personally challenging preparation, securing our family home and retrieving essential items without alerting Jasper to our activities. I accessed the house while security confirmed Jasper was in New York, Tobias reported. I've recovered your personal documents, family photographs, and the external hard drive from your home office. He hesitated before continuing. I also found this hidden in Jasper's desk. He handed me a small notebook, its pages filled with my husband's precise handwriting. It's some kind of journal documenting his plans. There are entries going back 3 years, including notes about Uncle Max's technology and ways to ensure your death appeared natural. The physical evidence of Jasper's premeditation sent a chill through me, despite the Institute's comfortable temperature. This wasn't a crime of passion or opportunity. It was years of calculated deception and planning. This is the final piece we needed, Detective Alvarez said, carefully placing the journal in an evidence bag, his own words documenting intent and premeditation. As evening descended, our preparations neared completion. Legal documents finalized, security protocols established, financial recovery mechanisms prepared, evidence secured, and my cognitive mapping complete. Tomorrow would begin the active phase of our counterattack. Everyone knows their roles for tomorrow? I asked, looking around at the assembled team. Nods of confirmation circled the room. Professional, determined, ready. Then I suggest we all get some rest, I said, conscious of the momentous days ahead. Tomorrow we begin reclaiming my life and my uncle's legacy. As the team dispersed to their various quarters within the Institute, I found myself drawn to the windows overlooking the darkened ocean. Somewhere beyond those waters, Jasper was making his own preparations, believing he was days away from controlling my fortune and my uncle's technology. He had no idea that while he'd been meticulously planning my demise, I had assembled an equally meticulous plan for his downfall. The preparation phase was complete. Now, it was time for action. "We're ready," Abigail said quietly, joining me at the window. "Yes," I agreed, watching the moonlight on the distant waves. "We are." Day 58 dawned with crystalline clarity, both in the sky over the Frost Institute and in my mind as I prepared to face the court-appointed psychiatrist. Dr. Vivian Mercer, a distinguished forensic psychiatrist with salt-and-pepper hair and penetrating eyes, conducted a thorough 3-hour evaluation of my mental capacity. "Mrs. Harrington demonstrates complete cognitive functionality," she concluded in her formal report, copies of which were immediately filed with the court and delivered to Jasper's legal team. "Her decision-making capacity is unimpaired, and she shows no signs of confusion or diminished executive function. She is fully competent to manage her personal, medical, and financial affairs." The first domino fell. By early afternoon, while Jasper's plane was still in the air returning from New York, we initiated the quantum key decryption. In the Institute's secure quantum computing chamber, I sat before a specialized interface surrounded by humming equipment. The process is entirely non-invasive, Abigail explained as technicians made final adjustments. "The system will present a series of conceptual challenges. Your responses, your specific pattern of analysis, will interact with the quantum state of the key, collapsing its potential configurations into the correct one. For 90 minutes, I engaged with increasingly complex scenarios involving patent ethics, technology governance, and philosophical questions about information ownership. Unlike the mapping sessions, these challenges had no right or wrong answers. They were designed to elicit my particular analytical approach. "Quantum coherence achieved," announced the lead technician, his voice hushed with awe. "Key materialization in progress." On the central display, patterns of light coalesced into a complex mathematical structure. The quantum encryption key my uncle had hidden from the world, secured by my mind alone. "Transfer to secure architecture complete," Dr. Way confirmed, his fingers flying across his specialized keyboard. "The encryption is now under Institute control, inaccessible to external systems." The second domino fell. With the quantum key secured, Detective Alvarez received the go-ahead to execute the arrest warrant for Jasper. Police officers were waiting at the airport when his private jet landed. The look on his face, Detective Alvarez reported later, replaying the security footage from the terminal. When they read the charges, attempted murder, fraud, theft, conspiracy, he actually went pale. The third domino fell. Simultaneously, Lawrence filed emergency injunctions freezing all assets in the accounts we had traced to Jasper and his Blackwood collaborators. Judge Harriman, presented with our overwhelming evidence of financial crimes, signed the orders without hesitation. $3.7 million recovered immediately, Lawrence announced as the confirmations arrived. "The remaining funds are tied up in the Malta Holding Company, but we've secured those accounts pending further legal proceedings." The fourth domino fell. By evening, as news of Jasper's arrest began spreading through financial circles, Dr. Lindstrom initiated the final phase of our financial countermeasures, a series of targeted regulatory filings revealing Blackwood's fraudulent statements regarding their supposed revolutionary security acquisition. "Trading in Blackwood Global Securities will be suspended before markets open tomorrow," she confirmed as the last documents were submitted. "Their shareholders are about to experience a very unpleasant awakening." The fifth domino fell. In less than 12 hours, we had secured the quantum key, arrested Jasper, frozen the stolen assets, recovered the majority of my funds, and initiated the regulatory actions that would cripple Blackwood's market position. Day 58 had been decisive indeed. The county detention center's visitor room was austere, beige walls, fluorescent lighting, and a thick plexiglass barrier separating me from the man who had tried to murder me. Jasper looked markedly different from the confident, polished investment manager I had married. His designer suit had been replaced by an orange jumpsuit, his carefully styled hair disheveled, the facade of control completely stripped away. "Why are you here?" he asked, his voice tinny through the communication system. Gone was the warm, solicitous tone he had used at my hospital bedside. This was cold, brittle, the true voice of the man behind the mask. "I wanted to see your face," I replied calmly, "when you realized you've lost everything." His eyes narrowed, calculation still evident despite his circumstances. "This is a temporary setback. My attorneys will have me out by morning." I allowed myself a small smile. "Your attorneys from Rothman and Blake withdrew from your case an hour ago. Apparently, they have ethical concerns about representing a client who documented his murder plans in a personal journal." The first flicker of genuine fear crossed his features. "You found my—" "Yes, every page. Every detail of your 3-year plan to access my uncle's technology. Your meetings with Blackwood. Your research into digitalis poisoning. Your careful documentation of my daily routines to find the perfect moment to administer it." I kept my voice level despite the cold fury I felt. "Very meticulous. The prosecutors are quite impressed." Jasper leaned forward, desperation beginning to replace arrogance. "Minnie, be reasonable. We can make a deal. I can tell you where the rest of the money is." "We've already found it," I interrupted. "The Malta holdings have been frozen by international enforcement action. The Monaco accounts have been emptied and returned to my control. Even your personal offshore accounts, the ones you thought I knew nothing about, have been located and frozen." His face paled further with each statement, the full scope of his defeat becoming apparent. "But that's not possible," he whispered. "Those accounts were untraceable. For someone without access to quantum computing resources, perhaps. For the Frost Institute, child's play." On the tablet I'd brought, I pulled up a live news feed from the financial networks. The headline scrolled continuously. Blackwood Global. "Securities under federal investigation. Trading suspended. CEO Winston Blackwood taken into custody." I turned the screen toward him. "Your partners aren't faring much better. The Skeleton Key project failed, by the way. Turns out you can't brute force quantum entangled encryption, even with billions of dollars of computing power." Jasper stared at the screen, his world collapsing in real time. 18 years of deception, 3 years of careful planning, all unraveled in less than 48 hours. "How?" he finally managed, genuine bewilderment in his voice. "You were dying. The doctors said—" "The doctors said what you wanted to hear," I corrected. "And you heard what you wanted to believe. You never really saw me, Jasper. You saw an inheritance, a means to an end. You never understood who you were dealing with." His expression hardened, the last vestiges of his charm falling away to reveal the cold calculation beneath. "This isn't over. People like Blackwood. They have resources. You can't imagine. Connections you'll never had," I corrected again. "They had resources, had connections. Past tense." I stood, gathering my things, no longer interested in watching his desperate attempts to reassert control. The man before me was a hollow shell, his power and confidence evaporating like morning dew. "Goodbye, Jasper. The prosecutors will be in touch about the additional charges related to my uncle's death." The digitalis signature was identical, by the way. Very sloppy. As I turned to leave, he called after me, his voice cracking. "Minnie, what about us? 18 years. I paused, looking back at the stranger who had shared my life. "There was never an us, Jasper. There was only your performance. And I'm afraid it's received terrible reviews." The turning point was complete. Jasper Harrington, the charismatic, controlling architect of my nearly successful murder, sat alone and powerless, while I walked away toward a future he had never anticipated. One where I was alive, aware, and in full control of both my life and my uncle's revolutionary legacy. 6 months after Jasper's arrest, I stood on the terrace of my new coastal home, watching the autumn sunrise paint the ocean in shades of gold and rose. The legal, financial, and personal aftermath of his betrayal had unfolded with the inexorable certainty of tides returning to shore. The criminal proceedings moved with surprising swiftness. Faced with overwhelming evidence, the journal, the financial records, the toxicology reports, Felipe's testimony, and security footage, Jasper accepted a plea agreement rather than face trial. 25 years for attempted murder, fraud, and conspiracy, with no possibility of parole for at least 18 years. Winston Blackwood and 3 other executives faced their own legal reckonings. The pattern of deaths connected to competing quantum encryption technologies, coupled with the documented financial trails, resulted in RICO charges that dismantled the corporate empire they had built. The SEC investigation uncovered decades of securities fraud, market manipulation, and insider trading. The Blackwood case will be taught in law schools for generations, Judge Rios told me during her last visit. A textbook example of corporate criminality and its consequences. Financially, the resolution exceeded even Lawrence's optimistic projections. Beyond recovering my stolen funds, the civil judgments against Jasper and Blackwood Global Securities added substantial compensation for the attempted theft of my life and fortune. The final settlement amount is $42.7 million, Lawrence confirmed, showing me the court documents, plus full recovery of all legal expenses and restoration of your original assets. More importantly, my uncle's quantum encryption technology remained secure under Frost Institute control. Rather than commercializing it immediately, we established an International Governance Council of technology ethicists, financial security experts, and public policy specialists to determine its appropriate implementation. Max would have approved, Abigail said when we announced the governance approach. He never saw technology as merely profitable. He saw it as transformative with corresponding responsibilities. The personal resolution proved more complex. The dissolution of my 18-year marriage left unexpected emotional aftershocks, despite the clarity of Jasper's betrayal. Therapy helped me process the dissonance between the life I thought I had lived and the reality that had unfolded around me. It's normal to mourn the relationship you believed you had, my therapist explained, even while recognizing it was based on deception. Tobias struggled with his own reconciliation process. The man who had been his stepfather since age 5 had not only betrayed his mother, but had tried to murder her. Yet, amid the darkness, our relationship strengthened, returning to the close bond we had shared before Jasper entered our lives. I'm thinking of redirecting my research, he told me one evening as we walked the beach near my new home, applying molecular biology to enhancing cardiac recovery in poisoning cases. Something good should come from what happened to you. My own professional path evolved as well. Rather than returning to private practice, I accepted a position as Chief Ethics Officer at the Frost Institute, overseeing the responsible development and deployment of my uncle's technological innovations. Patent law was always about protecting innovation, I explained to Kelly when she expressed surprise at my career shift. This is about protecting humanity from innovation's unintended consequences. The media eventually lost interest in the poisoned patent attorney story as more sensational scandals captured public attention. The notoriety faded, allowing me to rebuild a life defined not by victimhood, but by purpose. Dr. Watkins continued to monitor my cardiac recovery, which progressed better than initially projected. You'll always have some scarring, she cautioned during my 6-month checkup. But your heart function has returned to 92% of normal baseline, quite remarkable considering the damage sustained. My heart was healing, both literally and figuratively. The future stretched before me, no longer shadowed by deception but illuminated by truth, purpose, and the unexpected inheritance that had saved my life in more ways than one. 1 year to the day after waking in the hospital, I found myself standing behind a podium at a women's leadership conference facing an audience of hundreds. The organizers had asked me to share my story, not as a sensational tale of betrayal, but as a journey of reclamation and empowerment. The most dangerous prison, I began, is the one we don't recognize we're in. For 18 years, I lived in a carefully constructed illusion, my capabilities systematically undermined by someone who saw me as a means to an end rather than a person in my own right. The room fell silent. Hundreds of women leaning forward slightly, recognition flickering across many faces. When I discovered the truth, that my husband had not only stolen my money but attempted to take my life, I could have surrendered to victimhood. The betrayal was absolute, the damage seemingly irreparable. But what I discovered in that hospital bed was something my husband never expected. My core self remained unbroken. I paused, making eye contact with several women in the front rows. Each of us possesses resources beyond what our doubters can imagine. Knowledge that can't be stolen, determination that can't be poisoned, connections that can't be severed, and most importantly, a spirit that refuses to be extinguished. The subtle sounds of tissues being retrieved from purses whispered through the audience. I'm not standing here because of luck or privilege, though I acknowledge both played roles in my story. I'm here because when faced with the ultimate betrayal, I chose to fight rather than fade. I found my voice when it mattered most. I closed my notes, speaking directly from my heart. Your circumstances may differ from mine. Your challenges may take different forms, but know this. The same strength that allowed me to rebuild from ashes exists within you. Your value isn't determined by those who would diminish you. Your story isn't written by those who would erase you. And your future belongs solely to you. In your name only. As I stepped away from the podium, the room erupted in a standing ovation, not just for my story, but for the universal truth it represented. In reclaiming my life, I had found purpose beyond myself, helping others recognize and break free from their invisible prisons, whatever form they might take. My journey wasn't just about surviving betrayal. It was about emerging stronger, wiser, and more authentically myself than ever before. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.